This is Recipe for Sleep, a podcast where we dust off very old cookbooks and let them lull us into dreamland. We'd love for you to join our community at banksalt.com, where I share my own recipes and stories. And if you find this is indeed your recipe for sleep, consider rating and reviewing, or just tell a friend. Hello, I'm Erin Brindley, a chef and storyteller. I find recipes and their accompanying prose read aloud to be the perfect way to quiet my busy brain. I hope you do too. So turn the lights out, put away anything you were doing, and snuggle deep into your sweet covers. Imagine the kitchen of your mind. There are two cupboards there. Yesterday's cupboard, for all the things that have already happened that your mind wants to chew on, and tomorrow's cupboard for all the things you're going to do or what's going to happen later. It's time to put everything away in those cupboards. Imagine closing each one. You made it to this time where all you have to do is enjoy your pillows. Are they in your favorite position? And listen to me read you old cookbooks. Tonight we'll be reading from 100 Good Apple Recipes, compiled by the Agricultural College Extension Service of Ohio State University in 1915. Before we begin, think about the smell of an apple. Take a deep breath in, imagining the fragrance. And take a long breath out. Let's take two more, with each exhale finding us in a deeper state of relaxation. In and out. In and out. The apple. The apple is the king of fruits. It stands unrivaled in its position of importance in the pomological world. There are more apples produced and consumed in this country than all other tree fruits combined. It is cosmopolitan in that it is grown in nearly every section of the United States. It reaches its highest perfection in America. There is no other fruit which equals it in its hold upon the appetites of the American people. Were we limited to a choice of but one fruit, the apple would be the outstanding favorite. There are varieties to suit every taste and desire. It is obtained the year round. It may be eaten raw, baked, stewed, fried, in puddings, pies, or preserves, hot or cold. The apple can be served in a surprisingly large number of ways. This booklet gives 100 recipes, any one of which will prove delicious, and there are others. What a variety the housekeeper has to choose from. No need of sameness in the home, where the apple is the staple article of food. The apple is an ideal food. It is appetizing. It is easily digested and quickly assimilated. When tired, eat an apple, and note how soon you will feel refreshed. Dr. Wiley, the Pure Food Authority, says, "I have looked upon the apple as both a food and a medicine. It has in it many of the elements which are necessary to the sustenance of the human frame. It has some of the mineral substances which nourish our bones and teeth. It has a small amount of nitrogenous materials which nourish our muscles and our bones, largely, and our nerves. It has also in it a very large quantity of those elements which produce what we call energy, namely sugar and its allied bodies. It has also a series of acids which play an important part in the human economy. The apple has medicinal properties. Malic is the principal acid found in apples. In the body, it burns to a white ash, not to clinkers. The product, combined with sodium, taken in common salt, preserves the alkalinity of the blood, a condition essential to life and health. Apples are used in large quantities by all hospitals and sanitariums. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. There is every reason why the great American fruit should be used in every home. The consumer should learn to know the different varieties. Some are excellent for dessert purposes. Others are good for cooking. The consumer has a legitimate kick when given poor, wormy, scabby, deformed apples. They result from lack of care in the orchard. Up-to-date methods make a clean product. Demand good apples. Ohio is one of the biggest apples-producing states in the Union. Ohio apples give superior quality at lower cost. Why not use Ohio apples? Puddings and sauces. Brown Betty. 1. Cut 1/4 peck apples in quarters. Stew in rich syrup. Then cool. Soak half loaf of bread in water. Shred the other half. Line pudding dish with pieces of apple. Pour some of the juice over them. Dot thickly with pieces of butter. Squeeze out soaked bread and place layer on apples. Then, handful of sugar and spice, shredded bread and butter, and repeat. Bake 1 hour, basting with fruit juice and covering portion of time. 2. 1 cup of breadcrumbs, 8 sliced apples, 1/2 cup molasses, 1/2 cup of cold water. Butter a baking dish. Put a layer of crumbs, then a layer of apples, sprinkle with cinnamon and sugar, and dot with bits of butter. Repeat until the dish is full. Insert a knife in several places and pour in the water and molasses. Set in a pan of hot water and bake for 45 minutes. Serve hot with cream or hard sauce. Apples and casserole. Pare, core, and slice 2 quarts of apple and put in an earthen dish, alternately with 1 1/2 cups of sugar. Add 1/4 cup of cold water. Cover the dish and bake in a moderate oven. Serve either hot or cold with cream. Apple cobbler. Pare and quarter enough tart apples to fill a baking dish 3/4 full. Cover with a rich baking powder biscuit dough made soft enough to stir. Spread it over the apples without rolling. Make several cuts in the center to allow steam to escape. Bake for 3/4 of an hour and serve hot with sugar and rich cream. Apple compote and orange marmalade. Boil 12 tart apples in 1 quart of water until tender. Strain through a jelly bag. Add 1 pound of granulated sugar and let boil. While boiling, add 12 apples, cored and pared. When the apples are tender, drain them carefully in a perforated skimmer. Boil the syrup until it gels. Fill the apples with orange marmalade and pour the syrup over them. Serve with whipped cream. Apple custard. Beat the yolks of 4 eggs and 1/2 cup of sugar. Cook for 1 or 2 minutes and remove from the fire. Gradually add 1 pint of grated apple. Pour into a serving dish and cover with a meringue made of well-beaten whites of 4 eggs and 3 tablespoons of powdered sugar. Apple cup custard. Pare, core, and steam 4 good-sized tart apples until tender. Press through a sieve. While hot, add 1 tablespoon of butter, 4 tablespoons of sugar, the yolks of 4 eggs, and 1/2 pint milk. Turn into baking cups and bake for 20 minutes. Beat the whites of 4 eggs until stiff. Add 4 tablespoons of sugar. Beat and heap over the tops of cups. Dust thickly with powdered sugar and brown in oven. Serve cold. Glazed apple with preserved ginger. Core and pare 6 apples. Make a syrup with a cup of sugar and a cup of water. Cook the apples in the syrup until tender. Turn while cooking, but do not cover, as the steam will cause them to break in pieces. Have circular pieces of stale sponge cake ready. Take the apples up onto the cake. Sprinkle apples and cake generously with granulated sugar and set in the oven to glaze. Add 1/2 cup of the syrup from preserved ginger to the apple syrup and let boil up once. When the apples are a delicate brown, pour the syrup into a serving dish. Set the apples in the syrup and fill the open spaces with pieces of preserved ginger. Serve hot with cream. Glazed apples with spiced prunes. Choose large apples of uniform size. Pare, core, and cook until tender in syrup. Remove to a platter. Boil the syrup down to a jelly and pour over the apples. Fill the centers with spiced prunes and dust the top of each apple with powdered sugar and serve hot. Jellied apples. Peel, core, and quarter 2 quarts of tart apples. Make a syrup of 1 1/2 pints of water and 2 cups of sugar. Boil rapidly for 10 minutes. Cook the apples gently, a few at a time, until they are tender and clear. Remove them with a skimmer and spread on a platter. When the last of the fruit has been cooked, add 1/2 package of gelatin, which has been soaked in 1/2 cup cold water for 2 hours, the juice of 1 lemon, and stir until the gelatin is dissolved. Set the saucepan in cold water and stir until the mixture begins to thicken. Drop the apples in and mix gently. Turn into a mold and let harden. Serve with whipped cream. Jellied apples with almonds. Pare, core, and quarter tart apples. Stew until soft and beat smooth. Make syrup by boiling 1.5 pounds of sugar and a pint of water for every 2 pounds of apples. Put the apple pulp and the juice of 3 lemons into the syrup and boil gently until stiff enough to drop heavily from the spoon. Pour into a wet mold, and when cold, turn onto a serving dish. Stick blanched almonds into the jelly and surround with whipped cream. Apples in maple syrup. Cut 8 apples in halves and remove the cores with a teaspoon. Put into a baking pan with 1 cup of maple syrup and 1 1/2 cups of water and 2 tablespoons of butter. Bake until the syrup is thick and serve with whipped cream. Apple meringue. 2 cups of steamed apple pulp, 1/2 cup of sugar, 1 teaspoon of butter, 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon or nutmeg. Add the yolks of 2 eggs slightly beaten and 1 tablespoon of thick cream. Fill a deep pie tin lined with crust and bake without an upper crust. Make a meringue of the whites of 2 eggs and 2 tablespoons of sugar. Brown in a very moderate oven. Apples with nut stuffing and whipped cream. Scoop out apples and fill the shell with English walnuts and apple pulp mixed with mayonnaise. Place in a circle on a large serving dish and heap whipped cream in the center. Apple pandowdy. Line a baking dish with thin slices of buttered bread. Fill in the center with sliced apples. Sprinkle over the top 4 tablespoons of dark brown sugar and 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon. Add 1/2 cup of water and cover with another layer of buttered bread with a buttered side up. Bake for 1 hour in a moderate oven. Serve with liquid pudding sauce. Apple pralines. Core and peel 6 apples and cook in 1 1/2 cups of sugar and 2 cups of water. Make a candy of 1 cup of sugar, a little water, and 1/2 cup minced nuts. When this begins to caramel, put a spoonful on the top of each apple. Pour the syrup in which the apples were cooked over the apples and serve with whipped cream. Apple pone. Pare and chop fine 1 quart of sweet apples. Pour a pint of boiling water over 1 quart of white oatmeal. When cool, add enough sweet milk to make a very soft batter. Add 2 tablespoons of sugar and 1/2 teaspoonful of salt. Add the apples and pour into a well-buttered pan, cover, and bake in a moderate oven for 2 hours. Southern apple pone. Pare and core 1 dozen tart apples and put into a pudding dish. Scald 4 cups of milk. Add 1 scant quart Indian meal, mixing and cooking for several minutes. Add teaspoonful of salt, cupful of molasses, and a cupful of finely chopped suet. Bake slowly 2 hours. Masked apples. Take as many apples as desired, pare, core, and steam until tender. Pour 1 teaspoonful lemon juice over each apple. Powder thickly with sugar and set away to chill. Make 1 pint boiled custard, flavoring with lemon juice. When hot, add 1 tablespoonful gelatin, dissolved in 1/2 cupful boiling water. Strain. Take as many small sponge cakes or macaroons as apples. Dip in lemon juice and arrange in dish with apples on top. Fill apples with coconut and chopped dates. As the custard thickens, pour it over the apples. Whip whites of eggs stiff and dry. Sweeten. Flavor with lemon. Set in oven without browning. Slip meringue over the custard when it is firm, and set dish away until icy cold. Apples and rice. Pare and core apples. Place in a baking dish and fill the holes in the apples with chopped raisins and sugar. Fill the spaces between the apples with rice that has been boiled for 15 minutes. Cover and bake for 15 minutes. Remove cover and bake for 15 minutes longer. Serve hot with cream. Riced apples. Boil 1/2 cupful rice 15 minutes. Pare and core 4 apples, cooking them until tender in hot water, then putting them into a syrup made of 1/2 cupful sugar and 2 cupfuls of water. The rice may be cooked in the syrup if preferred, as this gives a better flavor. The apples are filled with rice and served cold with bits of jelly on top. Apples in rice cups. Boil rice in salted water until tender. Half fill coffee cups and let stand until cold. Stand in a pan of hot water until they will slip from the cup easily. Scoop out a small place and lay 1/4 of an apple that has been cooked in rich syrup in the cavity. Serve with the apple syrup or cream. Apples stuffed with figs. Pare and core large apples. Fill centers with chopped figs. Cover with sugar. Place in a deep baking dish and add a little water. Bake, basting well frequently. Serve cold with cream. Apple soufflé. Rub 3 pints of applesauce through a sieve. Add 3 tablespoons melted butter, sugar, and nutmeg to taste, and yolks of 3 eggs well beaten. When cool, add whites stiffly beaten. Turn into a buttered baking dish. Sprinkle with cupful crushed macaroon crumbs and bake for 1/2 hour. Serve hot with whipped cream, sweetened and flavored with vanilla. Apple pudding, 1. Sift together 1 1/2 cups of flour, 2 teaspoons of sugar, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 1 1/2 teaspoons of baking powder. Work into the dry ingredients 3 tablespoons of butter and add 1/2 cup of milk. Butter a quart pudding dish and fill 2/3 full of apples cut in quarters. Sprinkle with sugar and add 2 teaspoonfuls of lemon juice and 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg or cinnamon. Cover and bake until soft. Roll the dough mixture out lightly. Place over the apples and bake for 20 minutes and serve with hard sauce. 2. 1 cup of flour, 1/2 cup of milk, 1/2 cup of sugar, 1 egg, 2 tablespoons of butter, 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Beat well and pour over apples that have just been sliced and place in a well-buttered pudding dish. Bake in a moderate oven until the apples are soft. Test with a toothpick. Serve hot with cream or hard sauce. 3. Pare and slice 2 quarts of tart apples. Add 1 cup of water and cook slowly until soft. Rub through a sieve. Sweeten to taste, and when cool, add 1 tablespoonful of lemon juice and the yolks of 4 well-beaten eggs. Turn into a buttered dish and bake for 1/2 hour in a hot oven. Let cool for a few minutes and cover with meringue made of the whites of 4 eggs and 4 tablespoonfuls powdered sugar and 1 teaspoon of lemon juice. Dust with sugar and brown. Serve either hot or cold. Peel and core 8 apples. Put into each apple 2 cloves and as much mincemeat as it will hold. Place the apples without touching each other in a buttered dish. Add 4 heaping tablespoonfuls of sugar, the grated rind and strained juice of a lemon, and 1 cup of water. Bake in oven, covering with a lid. When tender, stir into liquor in dish, heaping tablespoonful cornstarch dissolved in a little water. Boil for 10 minutes, stirring all the time. Add a few drops of red coloring and strain over apples. When cold, garnish tops with marmalade. Apple custard pudding. To 1 quart of pared and quartered apples, add 1/2 cup of water and stew until soft. Remove from the fire and add 1/2 cup of sugar, 2 tablespoons of butter, and the juice and grated rind of 1 lemon. Mix 2 tablespoons of flour with 2 cups of fine breadcrumbs. Stir into the apple mixture and add the well-beaten whites of 2 eggs. Pour into a buttered pudding dish and bake for 45 minutes in a moderate oven. Serve with hard sauce. Apple Christmas pudding. Pare, core, and quarter 6 tart apples. Add a cup of water, cover, and boil quickly for 5 minutes. Press through a sieve, add a tablespoon of butter and a cup of sugar. Beat 3 eggs until light. Add 1 pint of milk and a cup of hot boiled rice. Add the apples and bake for half an hour. Lemon or orange rind may be added. Serve cold with cream or lemon sauce. Royal apple pudding. Select enough large apples to fill a pudding dish. Pare. Cut a thick slice from the top and save. Core and scrape out the centers until only a thin wall is left. To the scrapings, add a finely chopped apple, a few chopped almonds and raisins, a little sugar and cinnamon. Press the mixture into the apple shells and replace the lids. Place the apples in a well-buttered baking dish. Set in a pan of hot water and bake until the apples are tender. Beat 4 whole eggs until light colored. Gradually add a scant cup of sugar and pour over the apples. Bake in a moderate oven until the meringue is done. And serve with cream or lemon sauce. Apple whip. Pare, quarter, and core 4 sour apples. Steam until tender and rub through a sieve. There should be 3/4 of a cup of pulp. Beat on a platter the whites of 3 eggs. Gradually add the apple pulp. Sweeten to taste and continue beating. Pile lightly on a serving dish and chill. Serve with cream or soft custard. Apple tapioca. Soak 3/4 of a cup of tapioca for 1 hour in water to cover. Drain. Add 2 1/2 cups of boiling water and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Cook in double boiler until transparent. Core and pare apples. Arrange in a buttered baking dish. Fill cavities with sugar. Pour tapioca over apples and bake in a moderate oven until the apples are soft. Serve with sugar or with cream sauce. Sago may be used instead of tapioca. Applesauce. Cut into eighths and core unpared King or Baldwin apples. Cook quickly in thin syrup. The skins give it a pretty pink color. New England applesauce. Pare and quarter 12 tart apples of medium size. Put into an earthen jar or deep casserole. Add 1 1/2 cups of sugar and 1 cup of water. Cover and slowly bake in a moderate oven until deep red, from 2 to 3 hours. Spiced applesauce. Wipe, quarter, pare, and core 8 sour apples. Put in a saucepan. Sprinkle with sugar. Add 8 cloves and enough water to prevent apples from burning. Cook to a mush, stirring occasionally. Frozen applesauce. Wipe, pare, core, and cut 10 apples into quarters. Cook with a few grains of salt, 1/2 cup of sugar, and 2 cups of water. Rub through a sieve. Add 2/3 of a cup of cider and 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. Freeze to a mush and serve in cups made of bright red apples. German applesauce. Pour a good applesauce into a flat serving dish. Sprinkle thickly with chopped almonds and cinnamon. Serve with cream. Baked apples. 1. Wipe and core sour apples. Place in a baking dish and fill centers with sugar and cinnamon, allowing 1/2 cup of sugar and 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon to 8 apples. Cover the bottom of the dish with boiling water and bake in a hot oven until soft, basting often with syrup in the dish. Serve hot or cold with cream. 2. Core 3 large apples and place in a baking dish. Mix 2 heaping tablespoonfuls of sugar, 1/2 cup water, and 1 teaspoonful lemon juice, and pour over apples. Bake until tender. Fill centers with marmalade. Serve with whipped cream and chopped nuts. Panned baked apples. Core and cup apples into eighths. Put a layer in a baking dish. Sprinkle with 2 tablespoonfuls of sugar. Add another layer of apples and continue until the dish is full. Add to each quart of apples a pint of water. Cover the dish and bake in a quick oven until soft. The skin, which is left on, gives a fine flavor. Serve hot in the dish in which they were baked. This is very nice when served with the meat course at dinner. Core tart apples and place in a baking dish. Fill the cavities with strawberry jam and bake until soft. Serve hot with cream. Apple gâteau. Dissolve 2 heaping tablespoonfuls of gelatin in 1/2 cup boiling water. Slice 1 1/2 pounds apples into a saucepan. Add 1/2 cup cold water. 6 tablespoonfuls sugar. Rind and juice of 1 lemon. Stew slowly and rub through sieve. Then add dissolved gelatin and color pink with red coloring. Turn into a glass dish and set in a cool place 3 hours. Serve with custard or cream. Mapled apples. Core and pare 5 or 6 quick-cooking tart apples. Let them simmer until nearly tender in a cupful each of maple syrup and water boiled together for 2 or 3 minutes. Set the apples in a graniteware pan and press into them chopped almonds, dredge with maple sugar, and brown. Serve with whipped cream. Apple gems. Chop fine 4 sour apples and 1 beaten egg, 2 tablespoons of molasses, 1 1/2 cups Indian cornmeal, 1 1/2 cups flour, 1/2 teaspoonful salt, 2 teaspoonfuls baking powder. Add sufficient milk to make thick drop batter and bake in hot, greased gem pans. Apple snow. Core, pare, and grate 2 apples into a bowl containing 1/2 cupful of powdered sugar. Add the white of an egg and beat all together until light and stiff. With candied cherries, prunes, or jelly. Baked apple and dates. Serve garnished. Can and pare tart apples and fill cavities with stoned dates. Bake until tender in a hot oven, basting with hot sugar and water syrup. Baked apple dumplings. Cut rich pie crust into 6 squares. In the center of each, place a small apple, pared and cored. Fill the apples with sugar, cinnamon, and a whole clove. Wet the edges of the pastry with the white of an egg. Fold it over the apple. Pinch and flute the top with white of egg and sprinkle with sugar. Serve with hard sauce. Steamed apple dumplings. Fill well-buttered muffin pans half full of rather thick applesauce. 2 cups of flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of salt, 2 tablespoons of butter rubbed thoroughly into the dry ingredients. Add enough milk to make a soft dough, and drop 1 large tablespoonful on top of each pan of applesauce. Bake for 20 minutes in a rather hot oven. Serve hot with lemon sauce or maple syrup. Pies and pastry. Apple pie. 1. Line a plate with good paste. Fill with thin slices of good cooking apples. Sprinkle with 1/2 cup of sugar, which has been mixed with a heaping teaspoon of flour and a pinch of salt. Cover with an upper crust and bake in a moderate oven for half an hour. 2. Line a deep pie plate with a good paste. Pare, core, and chop enough tart apples to make 1 quart. Stir through the apples 1 quart of granulated sugar, which has been mixed with 1 tablespoonful of dry flour and a pinch of salt. Squeeze the juice from half a lemon evenly through the apple mixture and fill the pie plate. Dot with small pieces of butter. Lay 1/2 strip of pastry across the top, crossing them in a diamond shape. Bake in a moderate oven. Ohio pie. Serve hot apple pie with cream and maple syrup. Kentucky pie. Steam 6 large tart apples and run them through a colander. Stir in, while hot, 1 spoonful of butter. When cool, stir in the yolks of 3 eggs, the rind and juice of 1 lemon, and 1 teacupful sugar, which have been beaten together. Cover a deep pie plate, such as you use for squash pies, with good pie crust, and fill with the mixture, baking in a moderate oven 40 minutes. English apple pie. Butter a shallow agate dish. Select one that is deeper than a pie plate. Fill the dish with sliced apples. Sprinkle with a cup of sugar, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and a little nutmeg. Put over it 2 teaspoons of butter in bits. Add 3 tablespoonfuls of cold water. Cover with good paste and bake 40 minutes. Serve with cream. Fresh apple custard pie. To 1 pint of applesauce, add 1 quart of sweet milk, 4 eggs, 1 tablespoon cornstarch, pinch of salt, 1/4 grated nutmeg, 1 tablespoon melted butter, juice of 1 lemon and grated rind of half a lemon, and bake with under crust only. Apple and coconut pie. Line a deep plate with pastry. Pare and grate apples. Sweeten and flavor to taste with sugar and cinnamon or lemon. Sprinkle the pastry with well-shredded coconut. Fill out the apple mixture and bake. When almost done, sprinkle with coconut and do not leave in the oven long enough to brown. Date and apple pie. Line a plate with a rather rich crust. Fill it with a mixture of chopped dates and apples. Sprinkle over half a cup of sugar and 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. Add 2 tablespoons of water. Cover with a top crust and bake about 1/2 hour in a moderate oven. Victoria pie. Stew tart, juicy apples until soft and rub them through a sieve. To 1 cupful of hot sauce, add 1 tablespoonful of butter, 1 cupful of sugar, the grated rind and juice of 1/2 a lemon, 2 egg yolks, 1/2 cupful sweet cream. Line tin with paste and sprinkle over it cup each of chopped almonds and seeded raisins. Pour over them the mixture and bake. Then cover with meringue made of lightly beaten whites of 2 eggs and 2 tablespoonfuls of sugar, flavored with vanilla. Brown in a quick oven. French pie. Fill buttered pie pan nearly full of sliced apples. Mix with 1 cup of sugar and a little nutmeg. Sift together 1 cup of flour and 1 teaspoonful baking powder. Add yolks of 2 eggs, 1/4 cup of milk, and 1 tablespoonful of butter. Spread on apples and bake in a moderate oven for 20 or 25 minutes. For icing, take whites of 2 eggs, 1 cup confectionery sugar, lemon juice or extract. Spread on pie and brown. Apple cream pie. Line a tin with pastry. Pare, core, and slice into 8ths into tin, sufficient tart, quick cooking apples to cover paste. Sprinkle on them 1/2 cupful or more of sugar, mixing with a rounded tablespoonful of flour and 1/8 of a teaspoonful of cinnamon. Cover with rich sweet cream and bake slowly until apples are done. Serve cold. Apple tart. 1. Line a deep round pie tin with rich pie paste and fill it 3/4 full of apples, pared, cored, and sliced. Dredge with sugar. Put a twist of crust around the edge. When nearly baked, spread with a thin layer of orange marmalade and pour over a rich custard made of 1 cup of milk, 1 tablespoon of sugar, and 2 egg yolks. Return to the oven and bake until the custard is set. 2. Line patty pans with nice crust. Put in each chopped apples and a little sugar. Bake in a moderate oven and let cool. Just before serving, cover each tart with whipped cream and place a drop of currant jelly on the top of each. Prune and apple tart. Wash and stone 1/2 pound prunes. Peel, core, and slice 3 pounds of apples. Put in baking dish. Sprinkle with cup of sugar and grated rind of a lemon. Cover with pastry. Brush over top with beaten egg and bake in hot oven 3/4 of an hour. Apple turnovers. Cut ordinary pie crust in squares. Put applesauce through a sieve. Add a few grains of salt and a few gratings of nutmeg. The applesauce should not be too moist. Trace a figure on one side of the square paste. On the other side, diagonally place a spoonful of applesauce. Brush the edges of the paste around the apple with cold water. Turn the other half of the paste over and press edges closely together. Set the turnovers on a buttered baking sheet and brush the tops with slightly beaten white of an egg. Dust with granulated sugar and bake in a moderate oven. Breads and cakes. Danish apple cake. Stew 2 pounds of good cooking apples, using as little water as possible. Add cinnamon and sugar to taste. Toss 1/4 of a pound of breadcrumbs in melted butter. Let them brown lightly. Line the bottom of a well-greased cake tin with the thick layer of crumbs, then a layer of applesauce, repeating until the pan is full. Bake in a quick oven for 1/2 hour, and when cold, turn from the pan. Serve with whipped cream. Dutch apple cake. Mix yolks of 3 eggs, heaping tablespoonful butter, melted, cup of milk, 1/4 teaspoonful salt, and 2 cups of sifted flour. Beat till smooth, then add 2 heaping teaspoonfuls baking powder, 4 heaping tablespoonfuls of sugar, teaspoonful of lemon extract, and fold in stiffly beaten whites. Pour into well-greased baking dish, cover with slices of apple, and bake in hot oven for 1/2 hour. Serve hot with lemon sauce or cream. Fried pies. Roll baking powder biscuit batter to 1/8 inch in thickness and cut with small round cutter. On 1/2 of the pieces, put old-fashioned applesauce, baked in oven until red. Wet edges and place other half of pieces on top, pinching the two firmly together. Fry as you would donuts in hot fat. Drain carefully on paper. Hot apple triangle. Sift together 2 cups flour, 1/4 cup sugar, 3 level teaspoonfuls baking powder, and 1/4 teaspoonful salt. Work in 1/4 cup of butter and add 2 tart apples cut into small pieces. Beat up an egg. Add 1/3 cup sweet milk and use to mix dry ingredients to a dough. More milk may be needed. Spread dough in round pan Press pieces of apple into dough at equal distances apart. Dredge top with 2 teaspoonfuls of sugar mixed with teaspoonful of cinnamon. Sprinkle over tablespoonful of currants. Bake in hot oven. Serve. Cut in triangles with butter. Sweet dreams.